So good morning again, everyone. For those of you who just joined, my name is Melissa Bauer, and I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Sustainability Programs at the Pet Sustainability Coalition. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited about our speakers and our content today. So we're going to get started. In the meantime, please be taking advantage of that chat feature. We've got PSE team members hanging out to answer any questions, and let us know where you're calling us from. We've also been running a poll to see how familiar are the people on the call today with 1% for the planet. So let's see the results of that. And we've got about half who've heard of 1% for the planet, but wouldn't describe themselves as very familiar or currently a member. And then we've got actually 15% who've never even heard of 1% for the planet before today. So I'm excited that I think one of our speakers, Kate's going to be able to really help with this learning curve. So let's get started today. So just a few couple of things of housekeeping before we dive in. So everyone, because we're going to be inviting everyone on the call to break out into breakout rooms later, everyone does have the option of your microphones and video, but we do ask that for the remainder of this presentation, you do leave that turned off. You are very welcome. The chat feature is going on. Please feel free to introduce yourself. However, we're going to be taking questions over the entire course of the conversation through that question and answer box. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, you actually have a Q&A. And so if you have questions specifically for the speakers, that's where those will go. The recording and the slides from today's presentations will be sent to everyone who registered for the call. And at the end of this call, for the last 15-20 minutes or so, you're going to have the opportunity to network and hang out with and directly turn your video on and chat with both the PSC team and today's speakers. So if you are not familiar with the Pet Sustainability Coalition, we are a nonprofit industry association that works with over 200 different pet companies across the supply chain and across the globe. And we serve a dual mission. So we have an internal sustainability and member services team at the Pet Sustainability Coalition that works with all of our 200 plus members to help measure, improve, and celebrate their sustainability performance. And we also work to bring the industry together to address large-scale issues that are too big for any one company or any one sector of the pet industry today. But today we're going to be talking about, supporting your individual members. So if you have not checked it out, I strongly suggest you go on the PSE website, and there you'll be able to access our PSE toolkit that has a variety of tools that can help you on your sustainability journey. And today, what we're going to be talking about really kind of fits in this brand category and addressing this problem that right now, corporate giving, only 3% of corporate giving and philanthropy actually goes towards environmental giving. But at the same time, 91% of global citizens are interested in hearing about corporate social responsibility initiatives. So really helping companies in the pet space bridge that gap. So to have this conversation today, I'm so excited to welcome our two speakers. First, we're going to be hearing from Kate Williams, a rockstar CEO for 1% for the Planet. And then in a little bit later, we're going to be talking to Natalie Yoon, who is the CEO, founder of Bark Potty and a couple other different pet companies who are also PSC and 1% for the Planet members. So excited to hand it over to you. Kate, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen and resist the urge to want to just talk with all of you about my dog and my cat. This is Maeve. Can you see her doing her yoga pose in the snow? Is everyone seeing my screen properly? Okay.
Yeah, great. It looks great.
Yeah, so this is my girl Maeve, and then she's joined in our family by Neville. So who's Neville the cat. So that's who I really want to talk to you about, but we'll talk about 1% for the Planet instead, because that's the right thing to do. So let's see here. Sorry, I always have a little issues with slide progression in this format. Sorry. There we go. All right, so 1% for the Planet. We are a global nonprofit. our headquarters and where I am based is in Burlington, Vermont. But we manage a global network, and we actually have staff all over the US. And the 3% number that was mentioned is a really important one to us, because basically, what we have observed, and it's now been persistent, is that there's insufficient allocation of philanthropy to to address environmental issues. And we're not entirely sure of all the reasons for this. Some of them are that it's just can be overwhelming for people. So for people and for companies, like, how do you get your hands around how to support the environment? What can I do? Things like that. So really 1% for the Planet exists as a vehicle to build a movement that enables people to make a commitment, live into that commitment, make a difference for the planet, and together to increase the amount of philanthropy going to environmental nonprofits. And we're making a dent. So since we were founded, our network has given more than 280 million to environmental nonprofits across all issue areas. And I'll talk more about that as we get into this. So, I mentioned we're a global community. We now have, I think, upwards of 5,000 members actually since this slide was created. And we are also now more than 50% international. So we grew from the US and have really shifted to being increasingly international, which we're psyched to see, because the planet is truly international too. So our headquarters is on the East Coast, I mentioned. We still have a big network in the US and in North America, including Canada. And then the other areas where we have kind of strong concentrations of members are the UK, France, kind of Western Europe generally, and then Japan and Australia as well. And then, as you can see, we're also spread out across a number of other countries. And our nonprofits follow pretty much the same pattern. And that's largely because a lot of people give locally, because it does really help to sort of understand how your giving connects to you and where you are. In terms of the sector spread, like the way our companies are spread out, that's also important. So we have that big global reach. We also reach across a bunch of different industries. So people often associate 1% for the Planet and really other environmental giving with the outdoor industry. And certainly, as having been founded by the founder of Patagonia, Yvon Chouinard, it's very understandable that we're often like most closely aligned in people's heads with the outdoor industry. But we really, one of the things that we've learned about ourselves is we actually are in no more than 10% of our network is in any one sector. So we're very spread across a bunch of different industries, which is awesome, because it means that we really kind of have a way of coming to life in a bunch of different ways. So as you can see on this slide, we have some really amazing brands. So that's one really cool thing to see. But then also a bank, a housewares product, tea, beer, sunglasses, like a big diversity. So it's really exciting to have this one model with a very clear mission, but that can meet a lot of members where they are, and they have so much fun connecting with each other and doing partnerships together. So that's exciting. So we talked a little bit about this. I won't spend a huge long time here, but I do want to just again emphasize that it's our view that 3% is just not enough, and that nonprofits play a really important role. So we have had some people see that and say, well, that's because really nonprofits can't solve the problem. And they can't alone, but they play a really, really critical role. So our view is that the nonprofit sector plays a critical role, and it needs more resources to do that effectively and to really play its best role in addressing the scope of the issues that we face. I'm actually going to go back and just say one more thing about that before I go on to that next slide. In terms of why nonprofits and why we've chosen this philanthropic approach, I think it's really important. And, and I think given that, Pet Sustainability Coalition is a nonprofit, I really want to underscore the incredibly valuable role that nonprofits play and why it's unique and why it's important that we support it. And one of the things that's so important to understand about nonprofits is, we have the business sector, we have government, and there's space in between. And no matter how, engaged a government particular administration is, for example, in, environmental work, no matter how businesses are, how much businesses are doing, there's going to be some ebb and flow of how much those sectors are investing. Fortunately, business is leaning in more and more, so that's growing. But there's always the space in between where there is no market, or where there's not yet policy, or where there is not yet clarity on how a market or how policy can interact. Nonprofits can really quickly move into that space and either, kind of create a permanent value that's mission driven, addressing something for which there really can't be a market, or creating the space for a market that can move in, so where business can then come in and be part of driving positive change, or where environmental advocacy can lead to policy that can address something. But all to say, like, we always need nonprofits to fill that gap and to go in those places where there isn't a market. So just want to make sure that's clear, because I think there are legitimate questions sometimes around why nonprofits. And sometimes people want us to say, like, well, nonprofits are the solution. And I want to make it clear that I feel like, and the data supports that, there's a critical role that nonprofits play, and we need all parts too. We need business and we need government to do their part. So that's my little soapbox. So in terms of our model, why do we do this 1% model? The way it works is that we certify annual giving from our business members. And there are a couple of parts to that simple sentence that are really important. The first is certification. So consumers are increasingly interested in seeing companies lean into doing good, whether through philanthropy or for other actions that they're taking in terms of their sort of sustainability measures. And consumers are also appropriately skeptical, like, are companies doing what they're saying that they're doing? And so our model is a certification model. The 1% giving does not pass through us. We advise and support our members in their giving, and they give directly to the nonprofits so they can develop those partnerships. And then we certify it. And so by certifying it, we have that third party role, so that anyone with the logo is signaling to consumers that they have done what they say they're doing. They've given 1% of sales. And we have very good brand awareness and very good reputation with consumers. So all of those parts hold together. So greenwashing is a legit concern, because there are companies who are like, hey, consumers are interested in this. What's the cheapest way that we can make it look like we're doing good? And 1% for the planet is not greenwashing. It's a high bar, so 1% of sales, and it's certified. So those two together send a message that's legit to consumers of a true commitment on the part of that company. The other nice thing about 1%, before I move on from this slide, is you can kind of get your head around it. It is actually a big number, 1% of sales, particularly in some industries where margins are really small. 1% is a big number. And I'm sure some of you out there who are managing a P&L for a company or a nonprofit are like, yeah, 1%, like at the end of the year, that would be a big deal. And that's great. So we are asking companies to make a big commitment, but it's also one that we can wrap our head around. And like, each of us can kind of imagine 1%. We can think about 1% of our time or our money. And so we can sort of understand, like, okay, I get that. So it really seems to have that like psychological power as well. The nonprofit part of the equation, as I mentioned before, is really important and is really core to our model. And so the way we work there, again, we're not a foundation, so we're not giving directly to the nonprofits. The companies are, but we're approving the nonprofits. We're building the network of nonprofits to whom giving from the companies would be approved. And we have nonprofits all over the world. So we're looking at nonprofits operating in a bunch of different places and also across all issue areas. So climate, food, land, water, wildlife, and pollution. And then this year, this past year, 2020, we also articulated more clearly, integrated kind of cross-cutting way of looking at all of our environmental nonprofits, those that are focused on environmental justice as well. And that enabled us to bring on some new nonprofits who are, operating in spaces where they're addressing environmental issues and, either the vulnerable communities that are most affected by them, or, engaging people who have not been involved in the environmental movement thus far in work on those issues, a bunch of different ways that we've really loved learning how to expand the scope of essentially how we're defining environmental work by bringing this environmental justice lens into it. And we're learning a lot with our partners, and this is a journey that we're continuing, but this has been one of the really direct ways that we're essentially changing, again, how we define environmentalism and how we define environmental impact as part of our model. And so that's been exciting work for us to do. So just to kind of summarize the model, when a member joins, so say a business member joins, part of what they get from our team is, essentially a consultant. We're experts in environmental philanthropy, and we're experts in particular in how businesses can form really powerful partnerships with nonprofits to make every dollar that they're giving that much more powerful. And we really love to see the relationships that evolve between our business members and their nonprofit partners. And so the way we do that is through, this advising work where we're getting to know members. What do they want to support? What are the issues they're interested in? What problems are they trying to solve? What brand story do they want to tell? We kind of get a feel for all of that. And then based on our knowledge of the nonprofit sector and tools that we've developed, we're able to connect the dots and help those companies who are looking to, get our advice on nonprofit partners matched up with those nonprofits that are the best fit for them. And then, as I mentioned, we certify that giving. So they're giving directly over the course of the year. And then we help to tell the story because, the power of the dollars comes to life in the stories. And some of the research that we've done and that we've gathered is, tells us that people are really interested in data, but they really change their behavior based on sort of stories and a more emotional response. So, we really try and access both in how we're conveying the work that we're doing. Just really quickly on a more sort of nitty-gritty level, we do have flexibility in how our giving takes place, in that we believe that there are more ways than dollars to drive positive impact with our nonprofits. So when you think of the pie, the 1% pie that any company or individual is giving, and let's keep it focused on companies just because that's a little clearer. So they're giving their 1% of sales, and that's a pie. Half of the pie has to be in the form of dollars. 100% of it can be dollars, but at least half has to be dollars. The other half can be in the form of what we call non-monetary donations, still providing value, still valued and certified, converted into dollars, but can take the form of in-kind donations of product or services, volunteer time, or approved promotional support. So this is essentially approved storytelling that's helping to elevate the story of 1% for the planet as it relates to that company and their partnerships. And we provide a lot of guidance on that, and all of that non-monetary portion has to be, approved essentially by the nonprofit. They have to want it. Companies can't just foist non-monetary donations on nonprofits. So it's always a win-win, and there's a lot of value, and a lot of our nonprofits sort of speak to that value of both the dollars and the engagement in other ways that provide value for them. A couple of examples of the partnerships. So just because, again, this is how it comes to life. This is how we sort of see and feel the model in action. So King Arthur Baking Company, a really amazing company who's a member with one of their flour product lines. And they're 125 years old, national company. If any of you live near Norwich, Vermont, I highly recommend going by their bakery and store. They do really amazing things. And they're also really, really thoughtful about their giving. So as a primarily flour company, they are associated with a lot of farming. I mean, their supply chain is farmers who are growing wheat and, delivering it to make flour. And so one of their really great partners is the National Young Farmers Coalition. And, that's a really wonderful nonprofit that's really working to ensure that young farmers can get on the land. I'm sure all of you know how hard it is to get into farming now with the cost of land and just the way in which farming has evolved to be these very large plots. So to get young farmers on land that they can manage without a huge capital outlay is difficult. And so groups like the National Young Farmers Coalition are doing a great job to build that network of young farmers. And King Arthur Baking is essentially investing in their future supply chain. And so they have some really great relationships. They've done some great videos. They've done some great storytelling. And it's just this wonderful aligned partnership. So, back to that partnership advising that I was talking about, this is an example of how we got to know what King Arthur was really interested in and trying to solve for. And then based on what we knew of our network, we were able to make some introductions, and they've now formed a really powerful partnership that's, plays an important role in the storytelling and the impact that each of those are driving. I have many other partnership stories that I can tell, but I'll shift over here just to speak briefly about the power of our logo. So for some nonprofits, I think it can be hard to sort of articulate the value of brand awareness, because either that can sound self-serving, or it's not clear the direct sort of mission alignment of that. For 1% for the Planet, there's a very direct tie between the level of awareness, of brand awareness that we have, and our impact, because the more consumers and other companies have awareness of the 1% for the Planet brand, the more members join. And that, we have seen that time and again. We actually get about 120 business member inquiries a week. And this is businesses reaching out to us to say, hey, I'd like to learn more about becoming a member. That's a lot. And so that's from the presence of our brand in the marketplace. So that drives more membership, which drives more giving. And then also consumer awareness of the brand drives more purchasing. So consumers saying, hey, if I can choose to buy a Patagonia sweatshirt versus a company X or fleece versus a company X fleece, I love what Patagonia stands for, and I love that they're giving back 1%. So I'm going to buy this. That drives more impact as well. So really direct tie between the power of the logo, the power of the brand, and impact. So we really do work with our members on radiating that out, because it's a very virtuous cycle there. And this is just an example of the growth of the brand. And so we really do take a network approach. And as this traces the percentage awareness of our brand, and it pretty much also traces a comparable growth in the size of our network. So, we have a relatively small staff for this global scope of our work. And we've been able to grow this pretty significant brand awareness through leveraging the power of that network. And really a lot of what we do is about the network. So, the stories that we tell, the way in which we show up in the world is not just our little staff, it's about who's in our community. And that very much goes for our logo and our brand awareness as well. So I'll close with this great quote from our founder or co-founder, Yvonne. He and his friend, Craig Matthews, were fishing on the banks of the Madison River in Montana back in 2002. And the idea of 1% for the Planet was born as they were doing that, because they realized both of their companies did some giving back in order to sort of support issues that matter to them. And they just had a really clear moment as they were fishing, as they were, wearing some Patagonia items. Craig's company is a fishing company. They realized that, the viability of their companies depended on a sustainable planet. And they realized that their companies also inherently had an impact, no matter how careful they were or thoughtful they were as they continue to evolve their companies' sustainability practices, their companies are always going to have an impact. And so for Yvonne, it was really this idea of kind of don't have a choice. Nothing is free. You have to pay rent for use of the planet. And so what better way to pay rent than to have it be rent that's improving that planet and making us more sustainable? And one of the things that we found is that as companies really step into that and embrace that and bake 1% from the planet into their financial model, into their brand model, into how they do their work, they never stop there. So we have many companies who have taken a deep breath and stepped into 1% and felt like, oh, it's a really big commitment, but we really want to do this. And then they get into the community and they start talking to other members. Some of them are lucky enough to talk to Yvonne, who will not hold back and saying hey, you got a lot of plastic in your packaging. Or other, even their nonprofit partner might say, we love the support that you're giving us, but we're concerned about this aspect of your supply chain. So the number of companies, and there are many that we don't even know about because we don't certify this, but this is evolution that they take in the context of the network with the positive pressure of that network. They really, evolve into eliminating all plastic, addressing, sort of completely reorienting their supply chain, changing developing a new manufacturing process that uses recycled plastic so they can make their sunglasses frames 100% recycled. I mean, the list goes on, but just that basic act of kind of paying rent, of taking responsibility for your impact, like it's so many other things in life, it's a step upon which many other steps are then taken. So I will stop there, stop my screen sharing and turn it over to the next one. And I guess that goes to you, Natalie.
Yes, Kate, thank you so much for that really impactful information. So we're going to welcome Natalie Yoon from Bark Potty in just a minute. In the meantime, we've launched another poll so that we can talk about where are you in your corporate social responsibility journey? Are you active? Are you giving? Is it taking up a lot of staff time? Where are you doing that? But while we're taking that poll, I'm really excited to welcome our next speaker. So Natalie, can you hear me? Or
Yes,
are
I
you?
can.
Great. Well,
Hi.
hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining us. So, to everyone on the webinar, this lovely human, this is Natalie. She is the CEO and founder of several different pet industries, one of which is Bark Potty. And she is a member of both 1% for the Planet and the Pet Sustainability Coalition. So she's going to be talking to us about her journey and her company's journey and why she's choosing to be part of both of those organizations. So thank you so much for joining us today, Natalie.
Yeah, thank you for having me. First, I want to say, Kate, I love listening to your presentation. I'm very passionate about 1% for the Planet, and I'm so glad that we're a member. And I love everything that it stands for. So let me just share my screen and talk about, like Melissa said, our journey with Bark Potty. And it's a really interesting product that we have. Like Melissa mentioned, we have some other brands in the pet space. Bark Potty is a culmination of one of the products that we had in the pet potty space. So I'm very passionate about the environment and what we can do. And being a founder of a company and having the ability to use that power to give back and do what we can is kind of a passion of mine and makes me very, very happy. So Bark Potty, for those of you that don't know, is basically a better for the environment. It's more environmentally friendly pee pad solution. So right now, plastic pee pads kind of dominate the market because they've been around for so long. There's been little innovation in that space. And so what we did was we basically came out with a potty that utilizes upcycled bark, a natural material for dogs to pee on. And it's kind of a little bit of a, oh yeah, why didn't we think about this? Because look, dogs have been going out and peeing on grass, they've been peeing on bark, on the floor for eons. And we basically found a way to just, contain that, put that in a box and, and they use that, and there's the consumer benefits of this product and the environmental benefits that are wrapped into each other. So the great thing about this is that, whereas with pee pads, they have to be replaced every time they're being used. So you're basically throwing away a couple each day or a couple every few days. The Bark Potty is meant to last for weeks. So you're typically replacing them maybe once every month or every 2 months. So your carbon footprint in the landfill is much smaller. And what goes into the landfill is not necessarily just plastic pee pads, but the majority of the Bark Potty is shredded bark. And so you're putting back what the environment has. So it obviously degrades much faster. The components that we use in the Bark Potty are as natural as they can be. We are continually trying to source and make it more environmentally friendly. Our packaging is from an FSC certified supplier. The bark is also an FSC certified supplier as well. And we have compostable poo bags that come with it. But this is a great product because Dogs are naturally attracted to it. It's already something that they pee on naturally when they go on a walk. And we're just kind of, piggybacking on their natural instinct to do so. And then the great thing is that it actually does work. We've got a lot of great feedback and reviews. We've been around for a couple years. We're now in over 400 retail stores. The one thing I'm really happy about and why I emphasize natural is great is because this kind of goes back to why people use cedar in their closets. It naturally neutralizes odors, and the same thing goes with our Bark Potty. So you can have it around for weeks, and the bark actually neutralizes the odor, so you don't have that same smell issue that you do with plastic pee pads or with artificial grass. So one of the things that everyone here on this webinar it's probably crossed their mind is if we don't have a corporate responsibility platform right now, why should we? Where do we go from here? How do you even get started? And look, I had the passion where I wanted to give back, but it was kind of like, where do I start? And finding the Pet Sustainability Coalition was great because they kind of hold your hand throughout the whole process. And one of the things I will tell you, let me just back up here for the slide, is it should matter. The passion should fuel it, but if not, being in the pet space, you probably have heard about how there's been a demographic shift from
Kate,
baby boomers.
this is Melissa. I'm sorry, we can't see your slides, honey.
Oh, you can't?
No.
Oh, hold on. Let me just try one more time. Can you see it now?
No, we can't.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so here, let me just do this. I apologize.
Toby, there we go.
Okay,
if you want to just maximize that.
Yeah.
If you want to just maximize that screen.
Here, let me just do
Perfect.
That. Okay, there we go.
Sorry to interrupt.
So, okay, no, thank you for telling me. Okay, so for those of you in the pet industry, have heard this before, the shift of the major pet owners has now gone from the baby boomers to the millennials. And so the millennials, not to say they actually, but a lot of people care about the environment, but they really do. They are willing to pay more for a premium product that is sustainable. So they're actively looking at products that will help the environment. I mean, you've all heard of Greta Thunberg. This is their generation. They want things to help the environment. They want to be able to turn things around and incorporate it into the lifestyle and their shopping behavior. And so, in our journey, we first started with Pet Sustainability Coalition and talked about what we wanted to do. And from there, they told us about 1% for the planet. And so when we joined 1% for the planet, it was great because they already had done all the due diligence of like which nonprofit to work with. And even before I met with Pet Sustainability Coalition, I actually had spent a good amount of time looking at what is our strategy going to be? How are we going to link up with a nonprofit? Where do we give our money to? And you know what? The scary thing for me was there are so many nonprofits out there, but I don't know which ones are actually legitimate, right? I don't know which ones where 80% of my money is going to be going to management, and then very little of it is actually going back to helping and making an impact on the environment. And with 1% for the planet, they already did that. So I kind of just had to pick from, one of their partners, and we found One Tree Planet, which was great because it basically tells us a story or One Tree Planet basically takes the dollars and helps with reforestation efforts. And so now we have this really circular story where we are taking bark, the dogs are using it, they pee on it, goes back in the landfill, and One Tree Planet plants more trees for us to use for our dogs. So it's a great little story that's nicely packaged. But I would say that it's great because there's a lot of moving parts about this that someone can get intimidated with, but actually these organizations have already done all the heavy lifting for you. And so they made it really easy for us to have this program. So in addition to the 1% that we give back on our sales, there's also efforts that we do every year to kind of push the needle on what can we do to make Bark Potty more sustainable and more better for you. And we have the Pet Sustainability Coalition that we can lean on as a resource to help us kind of navigate into that direction. So So thank you. I would encourage everyone, if you haven't already, to join 1% for the Planet and Pet Sustainability Coalition, if that is one of your initiatives to link up with a nonprofit.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie. Kate, I'd invite you to come back on camera, and we're going to go through some questions. So first, let's share the results of our poll. So it looks like only 12% of the people on this call would describe their corporate social responsibility program as well-developed, organized, and well-branded. We have a lot of people who are just at the beginning of their CSR journey, or don't have a program at all. So I will quick plug, the Pet Sustainability Coalition actually is a 1% for the Planet recipient. So you can fund your 1% for the Planet dollars our way if you choose to go in that direction. But I've got some really great questions for you ladies. Kate, I'd love to start with you. We talked a lot about what this looks like from a brand perspective, but we also have retailers or suppliers as members of PSC as well. Can you talk a little bit about what this kind of program would look for them? Is there still a benefit, even if they're not, making an actual product?
Yeah, great question. And really, any business enterprise can become a member. So we do have retail members. I recognize that sometimes those margins are smaller, and so that can be more difficult. So that is one opportunity, though. Really, like any entity like that can become a member. What we do see at the retail level is some great partnerships with business members who are members, and really using the retail space as a way to showcase that partnership. So we have done some like in-store partnerships, like at a grocery store or something like that, that will have a sort of end cap promotion of different 1% for the Planet products that are already part of that store's inventory. That's just one example. Patagonia, retailers who are selling Patagonia gear will sometimes be able to, or will choose to sort of access 1% for the Planet branding associated with, where they're selling that particular gear. So that's an option. So I'd say it's sort of those two pieces. One is like considering whether membership for that retail entity makes sense, and or, exploring whether there are partnerships with different, depending on what's in your inventory, partnerships with those different members in your inventory to tell that story of 1%.
Great. Thanks, Kate. Question for you, Natalie. Can you talk to us? Have your consumers noticed this, 1% for the Planet? Have you had any discussion about it? Are people aware? What has that reaction been like?
I mean, that's a good question. I would say you do have some people who do recognize 1% for the Planet, and it's because they're already living that lifestyle of like better for the environment choices, and so they're actively looking for it. So yes, I would say they do recognize it.
Well,
yeah, sorry.
No, don't be.
Sorry, I was going to just say also, the retailers also, I have actually heard feedback from retailers as well, recognizing the 1% for the Planet. So it has been from a manufacturing like perspective, it's great. There are questions even like about Forest Sustainability Coalition, things like that. So I would say if you have a product, there is recognition about those types of sustainability efforts.
Great. We actually at PSC have been doing a lot of research in the growing consumer demand for labels. So whether that's a 1% for the Planet, philanthropy programs, or certified sustainable ingredients or things of that nature, we're finding huge leaps in the amount of that consumers are actually seeking out these labels and the certifications. Kate, I love the idea that you brought up of King Arthur. I love their products, by the way. They make amazing gluten-free brownies. But I love the idea of reinvesting in your own supply chain, right? And really funding the causes that really affect your business. Can you talk about a little bit how that matchmaking process works? So if someone's new to 1% for the Planet and we want to, we're not really sure where the biggest impact is or where we should put our dollars. Can you talk to us a little bit about that process?
Yeah, thank you. And I love that too. And I think it's a really great question because it really is part of how we're often able to help businesses and individuals kind of rethink what philanthropy means. Because I think oftentimes we think of philanthropy as something that we do when we have a little something extra, and it's something that's nice, and it's something that's feel good, and that makes a difference. I'm not like belittling that, but I think what that King Arthur example really showcases is the way that philanthropy can be really strategic, and it can be not just a little something extra, but it can be really core to how you do your business. And that's like game changing in terms of then how you think about it, because then you're looking at it from the standpoint, or you're bringing it into your thinking and as a filter when you're considering like, what problems are we trying to solve? When we look ahead and do our strategic planning, what are future challenges that we may face? What are spaces that we want to move into? And suddenly philanthropy goes from being this like end of year extra if we have money left over, to being a core tool that you use, in the same way that you think about like, what capital do we need? What capacity do we need? You will also think, what philanthropy can we leverage to drive these strategic changes that we've indicated? So I think when we're doing our advising, we see that as one of the really important shifts that we're able to do. And, as we work with companies, just through asking questions and really getting to know them, we kind of take philanthropy from the side and move it into the center alongside some of the other kind of core business considerations or functions. And that's a really valuable opportunity that we definitely love when companies sort of have that aha moment and see how, that changes everything. Because then it's not so much like you're giving 1% away. It's that you're using 1% in a way that is driving impact that you care about by giving it away, but also that's really making you stronger as a company at the same time.
Great. So we've got questions pouring in. We're going to get to as many as we can. But Kate, we did have a couple questions around. So if you can briefly just review about how half of the 1% has to be dollars and half of the percent can be in kind. And then we've got a great question around how has COVID affected all of this? As people are getting more concerned about, looking at their supply chains, for example, or, looking at balance sheets. Has COVID affected that at all?
Yeah. So that half and half, basically where that came from was really hearing from both businesses and nonprofits that there's different ways of exchanging value. And I don't want to underemphasize that giving real dollars to nonprofits is really important. So it's completely okay to have 100% of that 1% pie be in the form of dollars. And again, both companies and nonprofits have, noted that there are times when strategic, targeted, like well thought out volunteer time or in-kind donations can be super valuable. For example, in-kind donations of products that a nonprofit can use in an online auction or other fundraiser can be really, really helpful, because then it sort of has sort of a multiplier effect. And that can be really valuable for the nonprofit. Or, if it's a nonprofit that's doing events on the ground, to have volunteers show up and or to have products accompany those volunteers that facilitate, what's happening on the ground, that can be really, really helpful. So that's, that is all part of how we're trying to think of, like, it's about companies investing philanthropically in nonprofits and recognizing that there are a bunch of different ways that they can do that have value. So that's that. And if someone wants more like nitty gritty details, I'm happy to sort of say more on that, like offline. I'm happy to be in touch with anyone about that. In terms of the effect of COVID, that is a very interesting question, because this time last year, I was like tightening the old belt and like letting our staff know that the economy is going downhill. And so invariably it's going to be a tough year for us because we're totally tied to the economy, blah, blah, blah. I was completely wrong. Every single month last year, we beat the prior year, and we ended up bringing on a record number of new members and certifying more giving than we had ever. And really, as we sort of lived into it, we realized, not only were we wrong, but we didn't have to be wrong. We kind of knew, we got like nervous, understandably, like everyone else was. But then when we really thought about it, part of the trends that were already happening, consumer interest in companies that were making credible commitments to do good for the planet and for people, but also companies really seeing that they can and must be vehicles for change. And I think the COVID landscape actually really heightened both of those things, because in so many other ways, I think we all felt like a little helpless, a little locked down, a lot locked down, just, a bit sort of rocked by this fast moving global scale change in all of our lives. But we realized like the levers that we can still pull on are how we allocate our dollars, how we run the businesses that we have. We definitely had businesses that were hard hit. I mean, our travel companies obviously had a tough year, but there are enough other businesses that really kind of moved into the space. And many of them, it wasn't that they were doing really well. Again, it wasn't that they had like money on the side at the end of the year. It was that they were saying like, no, this actually has to be part of how we do our business, because we believe this is how we will stay strong during this time and come back stronger.
Great. I love that. We're actually finding the exact same stuff here at PSC, that there was all of this concern around environmental issues, like, people are using PPE and don't want to go into stores. And we have found actually the exact opposite, that people are playing. This has really accelerated the trend of consumers being more concerned about sustainability. So we didn't get to everyone's questions. I will include information on how to get in touch with both of these amazing women in the follow-up. But I will, we're going to launch into some networking where you're going to be able to connect directly with our speakers and PSC staff. We've also got a poll going. We'd love to know how you've enjoyed this webinar today. But I also want to make sure that we take time to let you know about a couple of amazing events that we also have coming up, and we hope that you will join us. The first one is on May 26th. It's the next edition of our Meet the Buyer series, and we're going to be sitting down with Francesca Mahoney, who is the head of sustainability at Petco, and she's going to be talking about their very ambitious sustainability 2025 goals that they just published, that 50% of all of the products within a Petco will be sustainable by the year 2025, and we're going to talk about how brands can meet those requirements and have a really vital discussion. We're also going to get a sneak peek at the Petco's very first sustainability report, which will be out later this year. And then the second event I really want to invite you to is happening on June 16th. We hear a lot of feedback that there's a real hiring problem here in North America right now around labor. And at the same time, we have an untapped resource of a workforce of formerly incarcerated people who are a very loyal, prove to be a very loyal, very skilled workforce. And what is the implications of those two problems happening simultaneously? So I hope that you will join us for both of these events. Thank you so much for providing your feedback for your polls. And then we're going to invite all of our PSC members who are on the call to stick around, turn on their cameras, and have some good, authentic conversation with our speakers and the PSC team that's on the call today. So we'll hope that we'll be breaking out into those breakout rooms in just a minute. And thank you all so much for joining us. And Natalie and Kate, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and share your amazing expertise.